Welcome, everyone. Again, Jeff Jensen, Director of Community Programs here with Trees Forever. Welcome. You should be able to hear and see us, but we can't hear or see you. So that means if you want to interact with us, please go ahead and type in the questions tab on your control panel. And then if you can hear my lips moving, but you can't hear anything, consider this phone number and PIN code down here as a way to call in on your telephone. Wanted to point out that we have our Stewards of the Beautiful Land webpage on the Trees Forever website. And so this landing page has all the information for all the webinars and field days coming up here. Save the date, because we do have 3 more of the webinars coming up here today, September 4th and the 18th, and we are still going to figure out how to work in Jackie Gouch and the water quality presentation that we missed. We're going to be recording that soon, and so we'll figure out what date that is. And again, we have that registration information for all the folks that are registered for that, so we'll be sure to get that out to you so that you can re-register for the new date and time. But we haven't forgot about that one, and Jackie had a great talk, so we want to be sure we get that shared. We do have a Facebook page, thanks to Bri for getting that up going and keeping that updated. So if you have questions, comments, if you want to post some pictures of all the great roadside plantings, a lot of color out there right now this time of the year. I was just at the Iowa Prairie Conference, came to Northwest Iowa, was held up here in the Okoboji area Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And a lot of folks from central Iowa said that it was like deja vu. A lot of the stuff they saw blooming had bloomed already in central Iowa a couple weeks ago. And so it was a rerun of all the great color. And so this is an opportunity to stay engaged and share some of those pictures and some of those experiences that you've had. Upcoming webinars, Native Landscapes for Bats. That's going to be September 4th. Again, that roadside roundtable where we're going to be talking to some different roadside managers across the state of Iowa to get their perspective on roadsides of all types. Here's our agenda for today. We'll be talking about some upcoming field days in just a moment. And then we're going to be talking about the Living Roadway Trust Fund, UNI, Tallgrass Prairie Center, Native Seed Distribution Day. It was quite an event. It's an annual event, but I had an opportunity to attend for the first time here this spring, and it was amazing. And so we'll be showing a short video there. And then we'll be joined by none other than Kristine Nemec from the Tallgrass Prairie Center, as well as a roadside manager in Johnson County, Chris Henze, and then our very own Bri Hull, who will talk about seed and how it all comes to be. Just a reminder on some upcoming field days. Actually, if you're down in the Des Moines County area, Stars Cave tonight, August 21st, there is a creek stomp from 6 to 8. So check out that landing page, the Stewards of the Beautiful Land landing page, and for more information on that event tonight at 6 o'clock down in Des Moines County. And then tomorrow we're going to be in Story County, and we're going to be playing Prairie Bingo, as well as meeting the roadside manager, roadside program in Story County. That'll be 6 o'clock at the IRVM shed. Going to be a lot of fun looking at some nice roadside plantings. Then looking ahead to September, it's going to be here just as soon as you know it. Friday, September 6th. Again, this is going to be near Sperry, Iowa, monarch tagging and a prairie planting. That'll be a lot of fun. If you're looking to get your hands dirty, come on down to Story County Tuesday, September 10th for an invasive species removal. That's going to be at the Christensen Forest Preserve. And then native seed planting for bird habitat in Black Hawk County. Again, that's going to be September 21st. We're jumping all over the place here. And then that one got repeated. Prairie seed harvest and tree planting at the Willow Lake Nature Center in Harrison County on September 26th. Just as a reminder, you should be able to hear and see us, but we can't hear or see you. So the way that you're going to interact with us is with the questions tab. And I see we actually have a question already that has come up here. Oh, no, never mind. False alert. So as we go through the presentation today, this is being recorded. We'll be sure to post that recording to the YouTube page at Trees Forever, and then you'll also get a notification that the link is posted. Move around, take your time, grab something cool to drink, and we'll get started here in just a second. Again, we're going to be having 3 presenters here today, Kristine Nemec, Chris Henze, and Bri Hull, and we'll be back with them live in just a moment. In the meantime, let's get to the video.
And these are not super fragile seedlings. Mm-hmm. These are pretty tough little buggers. So the main thing is just we're getting them in there. And I'm not sure how successful this is going to be. I think these plants will be fine, but you know.
I believe in them.
Hi, I'm Jeff Jensen, Director of Community Programs with Trees Forever. And this is one of the most beautiful times to take a drive on our county roads and see all the beautiful forbs that are blooming, the wonderful color. And chances are this was made possible by your county roadside program. Every year, county conservation boards and roadside managers from all over the state convene at the Tallgrass Prairie Center on the campus of UNI to get their yearly seed allowance. And that's what makes these beautiful roadsides possible. Let's learn more.
Hi, I'm Kristine Nemec. I'm the Roadside Program Manager here at the University of Northern Iowa Tallgrass Prairie Center. All right, today we're at the shed south of the Tallgrass Prairie Center. The Tallgrass Prairie Center is part of the University of Northern Iowa. Once a year, I host an annual seed pickup where roadside managers around the state come and pick up seed that they're going to plant in their county rights-of-way. Native seed is great because native plants have really deep, fibrous roots that help reduce erosion, so that's a big selling point for counties. They really like to reduce erosion on those steep roadside slopes. Once established, the native plants need less mowing. That means less fuel costs, less of a safety risk for the people who have to go out and mow the steep slopes. That's a big benefit. And drivers really like pretty wildflowers. They like the grasses in the fall when they turn those nice golden colors, so it adds visual interest to the roadsides. Keeps drivers more alert, maybe less sleepy if they're looking at nice diverse plantings. And another big benefit of roadside plantings is the pollinator habitat. Bees and butterflies are adapted to native prairie plants. So for all those reasons, that's why there's roadside managers from around the state coming in to get seed. They'll be planting it in the roadsides over the next year and a half. It's one of the most exciting events at the center, getting to see our friends from around the state who also like to use native plants. The first day of the entire seed pickup is when we have 3 vendors from around the state come and drop off all their seed. This year we purchased over 13,000 pounds worth of seed. We put the seed out for bids and we had 3 vendors who got the bids. So Friday they came with anywhere from pickup trucks to a little semi and dropped off all their seed into the shed. That was day 1.
Let's take a few minutes to see what it takes to unload over 13,000 pounds of grass and forb seed from our vendors. Okay, here is after our first delivery from Allendan Seed Company. 2 pallets of Forbes in boxes, in small bags, all ready to go. Things are just getting started here. Next up to deliver was Shooting Star Native Seeds from Spring Grove, Minnesota, and they've brought 9 pallets of native grasses for the distribution. All the seed is delivered. The warehouse is almost filled up with pallets of seed. Monday, the volunteers will arrive and help us prepare orders for the counties and cities that have roadside programs. Looks like Kristine has a little work left to do, labeling all the different seed species for the volunteers to do their thing. But I think that's going to wrap up day 1 of the annual County Roadside Seed Pickup. We'll see you Monday. Let's check back in with Kristine Nemec to learn more about what happens on day 2 of the annual County Roadside Seed Pickup.
On day 2 of the seed pickup, we have an assembly line of all these folding tables, and each table has boxes full of the bags of wildflower and sedge seed. Sedge is kind of a grass-like plant that also establishes well on roadsides. And we have volunteers go around and pick 1 bag of every wildflower and sedge seed and put it in a big garbage bag. And that helps get ready for the seed pickup. Basically, they're creating one kind of seed mix called the diversity mix that has about 40 wildflower and sedge species in it. That's what happens on day 2 of the seed pickup.
The task for our volunteers today is preparing seed orders for the counties. All the boxes of seed are neatly laid out on the long tables so that teams can move around the outside, placing individual packets of seed into the garbage bag, so that the combined order contains more than 40 different native species. This is called the diversity seed mix. Many hands certainly do make for light work. We finished a little early, so I grabbed Bri Hull, field coordinator with Trees Forever, and we visited the greenhouse to see what was going on up there.
So what they do is they seed them in the flats, and once they get a little bigger, they separate each individual plant into
Oh snap! Okay, so those are they're all out there. Now I'm pulling in individual plants to put in little plugs here that will eventually then go out into a
plot. And
So I'll show you what the plant that's ready to go in the field is going to have roots like that.
Oh wow!
So these plugs are kind of an interesting shape. They have a big hole at the bottom, and they have grooves on the sides. So the grooves help direct the growth of the roots down to the bottom. You can see how they're kind of heading straight down. And then when they hit that big hole, the air causes the death of the root tip, and that also forces the roots in there to branch. So you end up with a very well-branched, kind of solid plug that's easy to transplant. You can see how I can easily pop that out of there and we can pop it right in the hole in the ground.
Do they call that air pruning, where the roots hit the air and then that's next? Oh,
Yeah, that's exactly what it's called.
you learn something new every day. All the orders are prepared and ready to go for the counties. Tomorrow, they're going to start arriving by appointment. to get loaded up and on their way with high-quality native seed ready to plant back home.
Today and tomorrow we're going to have 44 counties from around the state come and get seed. Cities are also eligible to get seed. We just didn't happen to have any cities request seed this year, but some years we do have cities request seed. So these 44 counties will come and they'll pick up enough seed to plant 1,250 acres of right-of-way around the state. This is county right-of-way. So this is one of the larger seed distributions or restoration efforts in the state. It's not the largest, but it's one of the largest. But most of the seed packets that we get, the little packets of wildflower or sedge seed, each packet is enough to seed 10 acres. We leave it in its packet. When the roadside managers are ready to plant, they'll open up all these little packets of wildflower and sedge seed, mix it together, and plant it on the roadsides, along with the large bags of grass seed.
Today is the day of days. It's seed pickup day. County conservation boards from all over the state of Iowa are going to show up to get their seed orders. The garbage bags here have been filled with individual seed packets. Got some yellow tag seed here. This is some gray-headed coneflower. All sorts of different things. Some black-eyed Susans. And that all gets put into one of these bags to be planted across the state of Iowa in roadsides, north and south.
Most of the seed we purchase is yellow tag seed. We have a preference for getting yellow tag seed. So what does yellow tag seed mean? That indicates the seed originated from native prairie remnants that have never been plowed in the state. We have a position here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, the Plant Materials Program Manager, Laura Walter. She goes out and collects native seed from remnants. She grows it here at our seed production plots, provides it to seed producers, and then they grow it. And those seed producers are the people I buy the seed from. So why do we get seed that comes from remnants? Well, it maintains the genetic heritage of the plants we get. The seed that grows, that originates somehow from those native prairie remnants, has been adapted to Iowa climate conditions. These are the plants that our Iowa wildlife have adapted to. That's why we have a preference for yellow tag seed, because it originates from Iowa prairies.
Hi, my name is Bri Hull. I am the Northeast Iowa Field Coordinator with Trees Forever. I'm here at the annual seed pickup day with Kristine at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. All of the counties are going to be coming to get their roadside seed, and it's like being a kid in a candy store. See what we got here. This is the diversity mix. Oh my gosh, fox sedge is absolutely gorgeous. And then, oh, golden Alexander, they fill a whole field. It'll look bright yellow for so long. Milkweed, you won't believe the butterflies you'll get. Butterfly milkweed, oh my gosh. Canna milk vetch, look how cute the seeds are. Oh my goodness, oh wow, this one's a big one. Sneezeweed, I promise it doesn't make you actually sneeze. Oxeye sunflower, oh my God, they grow so tall. I'm rolling in seed now, but in a few months, our roadsides will be rolling in flowers.
The action has been brisk, but with the help of all the great volunteers, loading up each county takes no time at all. At the end of the day, more than 13,000 pounds of native seed for Iowa roadsides were divvied up and distributed to counties all across the state. This has been an unbelievable experience, and I want to thank Kristine Nemec, the Tallgrass Prairie Center, and the Living Roadway Trust Fund for making all this possible. I hope to see you next year at the annual County Roadside Seed Pickup. To volunteer, contact Kristine Nemec at the Tallgrass Prairie Center today.
All right, yeah, thanks for loading the presentation. I'm Kristine Nemec. I'm a program manager here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. Next slide, please. I'll talk about the history of the seed distribution. How did we get here? Why are we distributing seed every year? In the 1960s and 70s, as part of the environmental movement, there was a growing interest in prairie preservation and restoration across all types of landscapes. People started planting prairie. They wanted to learn more about it. They're converting farmland to prairie. Next slide, please. And as part of that, there were two professors in Iowa who were key in starting to do research about what would it mean to plant prairie plants in the roadsides. The roadsides were a nice choice for restoring prairie because they're very visible. There's a lot of them. In the 70s, the DOT was getting concerned about high fuel prices. They were interested in less mowing to save money. Daryl Smith at the University of Northern Iowa and Paul Christensen at Cornell College started doing research about, well, how can you actually restore roadsides to prairie? Next. In the 1980s, the public started getting more and more concerned about groundwater quality. They saw roadside programs or the DOT spraying large areas of roadsides with massive amounts of chemicals just to nuke all the weeds. And they didn't want to see all those herbicides getting in the water. There was a Black Hawk County conservationist named Bill Haywood, and he started noticing there was less weeds in areas of the roadside that had prairie grass just naturally growing. And he started taking pictures. He talked to people around the state, getting enthusiasm and interest about planting more county roadsides to prairie to reduce weeds, to reduce fuel costs on mowing, to improve water quality, which the public was interested in. So he started generating all this public conversation along with people like Paul Christensen and Daryl Smith about maybe let's get prairie plants in the roadsides. Next slide, please. As a result of that, in 1988, the Iowa legislature established the Living Roadway Trust Fund, which is a funding source that supports state, county, city initiatives to manage roadsides in an integrated, sustainable manner. So that means less mowing, strategic mowing, smart mowing, strategic use of herbicides on the worst weeds as opposed to blanket spraying everything. And this is a unique pot of money that Iowa has that helps support efforts along county and Iowa roadsides to manage in an integrated manner. The technique is called Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management, or IRVM, if you ever hear that. That's the suite of techniques that roadside managers use. Next slide, please. So what does the LRTF do? Well, for counties and cities, it helps provide grants for purchase of equipment to plant the roadsides. For example, on the left, you see that's a hydro seeder that's on the back of a truck where roadside personnel can get on top of it and they can spray a slurry of seeds and water, mulch, and a dye that shows that it's been planted onto the roadsides. Or on the right, there's a drill, there's forestry brush mulchers, if they want to remove brush, which poses a safety hazard from the road. So all sorts of equipment that's used directly for roadside management, they can get grants toward purchasing that as long as they have a plan, a roadside plan or an IRVM plan on file with the DOT. A county or city can apply to get grants toward this equipment to fund their activities. Next slide, please. Now, back in the 1990s, they would also use the LRTF to apply for grants for the seed itself. So each county would come up with a seed mix that they want to use on their roadsides, and they would submit an application to get a grant for their seed. Next slide, please. But in 1998, that's a photo of Kirk Henderson on the upper left. He was the program manager in my position. He was able to secure a Federal Highway Administration grant to get one large-scale purchase as opposed to all these counties individually applying for their seed mixes. And then in this case, he would devise 1 or 2 or 3 seed mixes. Counties would request which ones of those they wanted, and then they would come and pick it up. What this did was make it a lot cheaper because he was buying at scale, and it reduced the paperwork of having to review all these applications for these individual seed mixes. So this was huge for supporting roadside programs, and it's been through various names over the years. Currently, it's called the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program. It's a federal program. So these images are from the shed. Well, in this case, it was the warehouse. Originally, it was in the warehouse, and that was in the shed, but basically there's a lot of seed and the county roadside managers come and pick up their seed like you saw in the video. So annually, what happens is around 40 counties receive seed. This has remained fairly steady throughout the years. That's the average. Every year they request seed. And maybe one city, we're trying to get more cities to get involved in requesting seed. And again, the seed can only be used in road rights of way. On average, they get around 1,000 to 1,400 acres worth of seed. It's around 20,000 pounds. It's a tremendous amount of seed. And a big advantage is it helps the county save money on their seed. As you see, a recent value was $308 an acre for one kind of seed mix, and then $192 an acre for another kind of seed mix. So they don't have to spend money on that. They just have to put the labor and equipment to plant it. So what do we provide? This is just an example of the common grasses and sedges we provide. We usually provide 7 grasses and 1 to 3 sedge species. We include the big 4, which is big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass. Those are kind of your standard prairie species that have excellent deep roots that help reduce erosion. And fox sedge is always included. That's a pretty standard, commonly available sedge. And the other sedge species kind of depends on what's available. Next slide. Wildflowers, we usually provide anywhere from 15 to 20 or so wildflowers. One seed mix has a total between grasses and wildflowers around 30 species. The other one includes 45 species. This shows images of showing the diversity. We try to include different bloom periods. We try to include species that bloom all the way from early spring through fall. So there's always something blooming for drivers to look at. There's always something blooming for pollinators to feed on and to shelter in. So that's diversity is key when you're seeding. You want something blooming, something happening across the growing season. As you see on the right, we include butterfly milkweed and swamp milkweed. Another unique thing about this seed distribution is that it has national importance. As you can see on the map, Iowa lies right within the spring migration. Those green arrows are showing where monarch butterflies migrate north during the spring, and they spend the summer in the yellow area. And then the orange area that's kind of funneling down toward Mexico, that's where monarchs return south during the fall. So spring, summer, fall, we're right in the heart of where monarchs are migrating, where they're spending their summer. We've been getting more and more national attention because people realize the importance of having habitat in Iowa to help support monarchs. And as many of you probably know, monarch butterflies aren't doing so well. They had their second lowest population in Mexico over the winter. There's a count of how many monarchs spend the winter in Mexico, and the second lowest amount was last winter. So there's a lot of interest in getting habitat out there for monarchs. Now that's not the main motivation for counties, as Chris will talk about. There's a lot of practical advantages to having prairie for counties. But from a national conservation standpoint, there's a lot of interest in what's going on in Iowa. Next slide, please. So this year, our big excitement of the seed pickup was having Trees Forever staff come out and videotape it. I really appreciate that nice video you did, and staff helped volunteer. They helped recruit volunteers to help load the seed. That was this year's excitement. Last year's excitement was we had a reporter from National Geographic come out and visit the seed pickup. So this is Michelle Niehaus. She wrote an article for National Geographic as part of a series, a cover story they did about conserving monarch butterflies. And she knew of the national importance of the habitat in Iowa and how important it is to get monarch habitat out there. And she was aware of the importance of the roadside program. So here she is at the seed pickup. She interviewed me. She interviewed other staff at the center. And I thought that is just a sign that, yes, there's national recognition of this seed pickup, this seed planting in the roadsides, in addition to other efforts within the state, are important if we want to conserve the monarch butterfly, in addition to many practical reasons of having natives in the roadsides. People recognize the importance of trying to help monarchs. And that concludes my overview of basically how we got here, the history of why we distribute seed, and now we're starting to get more national recognition of why it might be important to have that native plants in those native plants in the roadside.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Chris Henze with Johnson County Secondary Roads here in eastern Iowa. I work as Roadside Vegetation Manager. I've been here for 20-some years in this county, managing the Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management Plan. So we've had a real active program over the years, and we've been the beneficiary, rather, of the native seed distribution plan or program for the vast majority of those years. And it's been a tremendous help for us, for the county, for our budget, to stretch limited tax dollars and try to do as much good as we possibly can do into the county right of way. So we're going to come at it from just a little bit different angle than Kristine and Jeff had talked about. So the IRVM program, when we are receiving seed, we work with, obviously we're applying, this is all grant funded seed. So we are applying for grants in about a year to year and a half out for next round of construction season seed. So as a roadside manager, we're working with our county engineer and our maintenance staff to identify upcoming road projects and bridge projects, so we know where we're going to put the seed back into the ground, back into the county right of way. So we know how, the areas ahead of time. So we know the history of the area. And by that I mean, is this an area that's perennially mowed? We try to plant as many acres as we can back of the right of way back into natives. But if it's an area that has been mowed for decades, generally if there's a road project there and we improve the road and the right of way, they generally keep mowing it. So we plant the natives back into areas that aren't going to just be mowed off or sprayed by adjacent farmers or adjacent landowners. Also, as part of the history of the area, we look for weed infestations. If there's a large infestations of invasive or noxious weeds, we can try to work on those ahead of time and either eliminate them or try to manage them before we plant all of the expensive native seed back into the right of way. And then also for roadside brush problems, is this an area that is going to be perennially hard to manage because it's getting full of willows and cottonwoods or other problem brush species? So that helps with the history, knowing what's going on and what's has happened in the past in county roadsides. And then too, another thing that we also look at is traffic counts. We are trying to get as much bang for our buck as possible. So if we can plant this on a road that has a high traffic count, several thousand cars a day, versus a very rural area that may have 5 or 10 cars a day, that's the reality of it, is that we're trying to get these seeds out and color and wildflowers out in front of people to let them take advantage of that and see the benefit and the beauty that these species are providing. So we get a lot of positive public relations from it. Another thing that we are considering when we are trying to identify where we're going to put this seed into the county right of way are future maintenance issues. And I have prescribed fire with a question mark, and that's always a tough. We do a lot of burning in the county right of way. If we plant this native seed and we establish a nice prairie planting, are we going to be able to use prescribed fire as a management tool? By that I mean, if we have a really high traffic count, that makes it more challenging to burn. Is there a subdivision right on the other side of the fence that they may or may not like that fire? Are there 200 acres of dry CRP on the other side of the fence that makes it challenging? I have mowing down as a maintenance issue. Will we be able to mow it? Is this an area that's perennially wet? Is it really steep? We plant a lot of natives on really wet and steep areas, but you have to know that going in. Can we get on that slope to maintain it? And conversely, is this, as I mentioned before, is this an area that gets mowed a lot anyway? So is this the right species and the right suite of species to be planting there? We look at other issues like snow drifting. We don't want to create a snow drifting issue by planting natives back into the right of way. There's a lot of positive benefits from them, but it's something that we consider is that this is an area that's perennially a problem for snow drifting. Do we need to maybe choose either a shorter native grass species and wildflowers, or do we need to choose more of a turf type species? Also, visibility. We don't want to create a visibility issue at intersections. Natives are a great choice, but maybe not the right species in all locations. Close to intersections, we will do the ditch bottom and back slopes. with natives, but we don't want to create an issue at an intersection or for somebody pulling out of their driveway. So we try to factor that in by either choosing shorter species of natives, whether that's little blue stem or side oats grama or a similar species, and shorter wildflowers. Or if we have to, we might save those species and move them down the road to a better area. And then also drainage is something area that we're looking at too. If it's a really wet ditch, some of the species that we get from Kristine aren't suitable for real wet areas. So we may need to put them in drier areas, sandy soils, clay soils. But if it's an area that is going to just be nothing but cattails and reed canary grass, we'd consider that as far as what we're going to plant and when we're going to plant it. And then lastly is future development in a growing community and county like here in Johnson County. That's part of the history of the area, is knowing what's going to happen in the future. Is if this is close to an area that we think that the city is going to annex, or there's going to be a large development planned in the near future, maybe we would hold off on planting natives back into the right of way if we know that area is going to be disturbed in 3 to 4 to 5 years. There's no sense putting that seed in the ground. Let's put it elsewhere where more people can get some use out of it, and we can get the benefit from using natives. The diversity mix, as Kristine mentioned, there's basically two different mixes: the diversity mix and a ditch cleanout mix. We typically get the diversity mix for our plantings, which is a higher number of forbs or wildflowers and a lower percentage of grasses. We are using those because we want as much bang for the buck as we can. We want the color and some pop for people that are driving along, hopefully at 55, but maybe faster than that, so they can see those species as they're driving down the road. And where we're putting that is on bridge reconstructions, road regrades, and high traffic and visibility areas. So where does all that seed go? As I mentioned, it goes into the county right of way. All of the seed that we get from Kristine and Tallgrass Prairie Center in the seed distribution program all goes back into county right of way. We don't put that into city right of way or state right of way. We don't plant it on private property. Part of the requirements for us to get the seed is that we have to put it into county right of way. We have to have the seed bed prepped. That's part of our cost share to enable us to get some of that seed, as we do all of the seed bed prep. And then we get the establishment and maintenance phase of it too, to get things established. So you can see here this new bridge. This is actually in the south side of the county, down close to Hills. If any of our listeners are around there, it's not a real high definition program, but photo rather. But you can see all the golden Alexanders and spider wart that were put in with that new bridge construction. So that's just an example of where a bridge that we would follow behind and do all of the erosion control and then plant natives. It also goes into new road construction. When we do a full road regrade, if it's bare soil, we will follow behind and do all of the erosion control and stabilizing crop and plant natives back into these areas in the right locations. And then ditch cleanouts. And this is an example of where we are trying to reestablish the cross section of a roadway in order to improve drainage. So our maintenance crews would follow or go behind. We would go behind them after they have dug all these road ditches out. And if it's the right location for us to plant natives, then that we would put those into a ditch cleanout. Many times you'll see counties using the cleanout mix, but in just more rural, low volume areas, you'll use the cleanout mix and save some of your diversity mix for higher traffic counts and areas where you can get more public relations use out of. We use it. We put the seed mix into brush removal areas and also demonstration plots that we've done multiple spots around the county to try to show off what we're trying to do in our roadside program and show the benefits of natives. I didn't include it in this, but I've got a real good picture of this sign that I didn't put in some other presentations. And that as these natives establish well, as I mentioned, we were trying to use some prescribed fire, and the picture is a good picture of this sign on fire as we burned through this whole prairie a number of years ago. So how do the county programs use that seed? We use a lot of different tools into the right of way. As Kristine mentioned, we use a lot of hydroseeding. in the right of way. A lot of that is because of the slopes. Many of the slopes are really steep. It's hard to get traditional equipment on. So it's a great tool to get on steep and wet slopes. A lot of the county programs around the state are going to use native grass drills for bare soil. I find like a road construction or a bridge project, or in some cases some interseeding projects where they would use the no-till drill to drill the natives down into the existing sod, and then probably use some chemicals to set back the existing vegetation while those natives establish. And another tool that we use a lot to utilize the native grass mix and wildflower mix is a Vicon broadcast seeder. And that's different than your traditional broadcast seeder that you would use for your yard or lawn, in that the Vicon seeder, we run the cover crops, fertilizer, and a lot of the fluffy natives right through that, whereas a typical broadcast seeder, you wouldn't be able to put all of the fluffy natives through it. So this particular type of seeder goes on the back of the tractor, and we can use that for everything we need to. And then obviously another seeding method that we use is the old-fashioned way. Mix the seed up. When we get it from Kristine, we mix it all up and bag it up and put it in as mouse-proof a container as we can, if you can really keep the mice completely out. And we grab buckets of seed and we go out and hand seed. So it's not necessarily that you have to have expensive, fancy equipment to do with this seeding. So how have we benefited? That's really the impressive part. We've received seed, I believe now, for 26 years. For the last 26 years for our right-of-way projects. Usually you can get the seed allotments, whether that's a diversity seed mix or the ditch cleanout mix in a 10-acre allotment, just depending on what you've identified with you working with your county engineer and maintenance staff, what you've got coming up for road projects. On average, we probably get around 20 acres of seed per year, so 2 allotments of the diversity mix. So over 26 years, that's approximately 520 acres of wildflowers and native grasses, and also habitat for pollinators and wildlife, and erosion control in the right of way. And that's a primary reason why we're using any of these species. You'd seen earlier the photo of the native species root plant, or roots that are going down into the soil, and that's the reason why we are establishing all of these species in the right of way, trying to slow that water down and have that water infiltrate, and then also getting the benefit to pollinators, water infiltration, that sort of thing. So, and honestly, a lot of it is the money. It's worth a lot of money in already stretched county budgets. So that's money that counties have not had to expend out of our own budgets, that we could get native grasses and wildflowers to put back into our road projects that probably wouldn't have gotten seeded normally. And also importantly, I think it's important to note that it's helped counties around the state to be better land stewards of that, and better neighbors and caretakers of that roadside resource. As far as the roadside resource, we've got about 6,000 acres just of county right of way in Johnson County, which is extremely impressive. Works out to about 1,800 miles of ditch that we are responsible for, just county roadside, and over 500,000 acres of right-of-way statewide. So there's a significant amount of habitat that we can put this native seed mix into the right-of-way statewide. So some of the seed projects, or some of the projects that we've been successful. This actually isn't ours. I robbed a few photos, but the important part is that we can have all of the needs met for transportation. We can have efficient traffic flow. We can have utilities, but we can also have a diverse plant community in that roadside that's doing its job. It's a functional plant community that has excellent pollinator usage, wildlife habitat, water infiltration, erosion control, and a whole host of other benefits. And also the aesthetics of it. So we plant a whole range of species, the ones we get from Kristine. Lots of different wildflowers, lots of different colors. We try to put in a mix that has different bloom heights, different colors, different textures, and different blooming dates. So there's always color and some visual interest throughout the growing season. And even in rural areas, rural Iowa, even if you're not in a growing, busy county like Johnson County, there's room. There's places where we can have pocket prairies, or we can have holdover areas for pollinators, and the entire right-of-way around the state and private property does not need to be necessarily just row crops. It can be a mix of a diverse plant community that can fit and be part of the puzzle of how we maintain that right-of-way statewide, that 600,000 acres of just county right-of-way statewide, and that doesn't include, you know, state right-of-way and city right-of-way. So I'll hand it over to Bri, and then we think we'll be taking questions here at the end, but hopefully you learned a little bit about how we are managing and why we are using some of the native grass seed mixes that we get from Kristine, and how we're using those in the right-of-way.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you so much for that presentation. And yes, let's give it over to Bri as she loads her talk. A reminder that put your questions in the questions tab. We are answering them as we go. Chris, a whole slew of questions have come through for you talking about some maintenance stuff. We'll get to that in just 3 shakes of a lamb's tail here. But first, we're going to have Bri give us just a real quick overview of seed and seedling.
Beautiful. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bri Hull. I am the Northeast Iowa Field Coordinator for Trees Forever. And for 2 years before that, I worked with Kristine as her AmeriCorps member at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. So I had the awesome opportunity to learn about all of these different things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where the seed for the seed distribution and for our roadsides comes from. So as we discussed before, there's a preference for the yellow tag seed, and that means that that seed came from or is descended from plants that are in remnants that have never been plowed. So what we would do is we would go out with Laura Walter, sometimes on 10, 12-hour trips, and collect seed from a variety of different remnants. So here we are out in a couple of remnants, just searching. It's a really great scavenger hunt and a ton of fun. And then, so we bring all of that seed back and we clean it, we wait, and then Laura will actually go into the greenhouse and start sowing it. Most of the seed will either start out in individual plug flats, or they start out in flats like this, where you see all the grasses. This helps them grow up really nice and strong with the support of the roots around them. And then, see, aren't they just like the cutest? They're so tiny. And then you can see here down below that they grow into these little nice flats. And you can see they have these very impressive roots, even when they're just little guys. That's just a little Baptisia plant. You can see Ethan is very surprised. But yeah, so the methods that we use to get these out of the flats into the plugs, there are a couple of options. We actually use tweezers to go around the individual plant, gently squeeze and pull it out. And then we use that to place it in. We will actually use a chopstick to make sure we thread the longest taproot down to the very bottom of the plug flat that we can get it to. So if you've never been out to the Tallgrass Prairie Center, they did share it with a warehouse and a mailing system for you and I. So if you look at number 1 up here, that's where the Tallgrass Prairie Center is. And then this is all of the land. And you can see that a lot of these areas are actually the plots. So you see this front area and you don't think too much of it. You go down the hill past a couple of trees and you see all of these gorgeous plots of native plants. Where is my picture? Oh no, it's not there. And the plots eventually grow up to look like this. These are actually cardinal flower and they haven't been quite weeded yet, but that's another big job once the plants have been put into the ground. I don't know where all my photos went. Oh no. Either way, if you need other pictures of the plots, you can check out the TPC's website. The way that they actually grow the plots, they plow it up. A lot of them, they'll put down this large plastic tarp. You'll puncture holes in it, and then we'll plant the plugs in. And with the help of volunteers, AmeriCorps members, and staff, hundreds of plugs get planted every day. We help them grow up. Some of them need to be watered. Some of them just need to be weeded. And then Laura has her various methods of harvesting it. And then she provides that seed that's grown in the plots to the native seed growers, who then cultivate it for even more. And then Kristine puts a bid on it, and then they end up in our roadsides.
Fantastic, Bri. Thank you so much for giving us that little overview. You know, that's a whole video in and of itself of all the work that was done that day in the greenhouse. And so maybe look forward to that sometime in the future here. With that, I'd like to bring all of our guest presenters back together so that we can ask some questions here. And right off the bat, I'm going to give this one to Chris. Chris, talking about maintenance on some of these plantings here. And Mary Ellen wants to know, what are some of the maintenance requirements that might dissuade counties from participating in the roadside program, understanding it takes years to get natives established, how often are burns needed, how often is reseeding, for example, required if drought happens? I know that's a pretty loaded question, but maybe what your thoughts are.
As far as, there's really, I can't think of too many reasons why a county wouldn't want to plant natives in the roadside. You know, they're a long-term plant community, and like you mentioned, it does take a period of time to get established, well established, you know, but that's what we're trying to do, is to create a long-term, durable plant community that can kind of take care of itself versus a high maintenance, cool season grass, non-native grass that requires mowing, requires watering, requires fertilization. So the maintenance requirements, once it's established, now planting prairies is a little bit more work up front, you know, to get them established. You know, mowing can be your friend, burning needs to be your friend, and maybe, you know, potentially some spot spraying for noxious or invasive species. But once it's well established, that area should be able to withstand invasion from invasive species, from encroaching brush, you know, things like that are safety hazards. But once it's well established, it doesn't take that much to maintain that. You know, and part of the question is, how often do you need to burn? You know, there's people that are experts at that, and there's always a debate on how often you should burn. You know, depending on what you're managing for. If you're managing a roadside prairie, it may be different than on private property or county conservation board property, and then also what species are there as far as reptiles, amphibians, things like that you want to be cognizant of. We tried to, if we have a mile of well-established roadside and we have prairie on either side, we try to burn on a 3 to 5 year rotation roughly, but we don't burn each side of the road. That said, I mean, and part of that is to leave like a habitat refugia up on one side. So there other species that need those dormant plants have an area to go, whether that's bugs, turtles, salamanders, rabbits, whatever. We want to leave some habitat out there. So I hope I answered kind of the question. There was a lot of information there.
Indeed.
So I can't think of any good reason why you wouldn't want to plant something that's going to take care of itself. You know, we try not to mow other than when we absolutely have to. You know, if we need to mow, we need to mow. But if we can plant a plant community that does a better job of taking care of itself and having us not spend as much time on that, whether with tractors and heavy mowers with soil compaction and burning diesel, you know, and destroying that habitat through mowing. And, you know, if we only have to go in there once every 3 to 5 years to burn that area, that seems like it would be a much better management tool than the other methods.
Chris, another follow-up question. In your experiences, how do you address landowners that mow or bale that right away along their properties?
It's a slow educational curve, honestly. You know, you pick and choose your battles. You know, in the reality of it, that's, you know, sometimes you're not going to dissuade folks from mowing or baling. You know, but mowing can be a good thing in establishments. It's a good thing to establish that prairie. Baling, probably not so much a great management tool long term. But that said, there are areas around the county right of way that have gotten baled for a long time, and there's no noxious weeds there and no brush. So the taxpayers are not expending taxpayer dollars to maintain that. Now, that said, there's also not very much for habitat. You know, is it great habitat? Probably not. You know, the great erosion control? Probably not. So, you know, that's part of the advantage of having a roadside program, and one that we've been fortunate in this county to have one for 30 to 40 years in this county, and in that you know the history of an area. So as I mentioned, you're looking at a road regrade from you know, point A to point B, and you know the history of that area if you've been there for a little while in that county. So you can either work with that landowner or you know, if you know that that landowner is, if he's mowed it and his dad's mowed it and his grandpa's mowed it, that's, you know, you can start the educational process to teach them that, hey, we're trying to plant species in here that are going to take care of itself. They're going to cost you as a taxpayer less money. Also provide a lot of other benefits that we've talked about several times. Some people you reach, some people you don't. You don't. So you move on to the next spot.
Well said. Well said. Fair enough. Okay, a couple other questions here. Can a roadside, I imagine with natives, be developed on a state highway just as a county roadside can be? And so I guess maybe that's to say at the state level, does anything similar exist, Chris, that you know of?
The state has a very active roadside program that they do behind their road construction projects.
Gotcha.
They do the vast majority, depending on location, you know, no different than on the county level. They're analyzing each site, trying to decide, is this the right species mix for this area? You know, depending on all of the various things I'd said before, whether that's slope or drainage or snow drifting or the other various things that have to be considered ahead of time. So that said, they follow behind a lot of their construction projects, and they have contractors do it. Most of their seeding is done through contractors. They don't have in-house staff to do that. But they, as far as an adjacent landowner that would like to work with the state, I believe they will work with you. You know, it takes a little bit. You know, they're a large state agency, so you know you have to jump through their hoops. They're going to ask you the same questions that they are considering. You know, is this going to be a snow drifting problem? Is this going to be a visibility issue? Is this going to be a problem for utilities and for your neighbors? So they will work with you, but just be prepared to answer some of these questions ahead of time. So, you know, and then also they're going to want to know, are you going to cut the trees out of it? You know, because they want to manage woody vegetation. Are you going to be managing Canada thistle and other noxious weeds in that planting? Because they don't want to encourage some of the noxious species even in the state right of way.
Certainly, certainly. Here's a question for Kristine. Kristine, in the video, we saw the people wearing the masks. Was this COVID?
In that case, it's because of the seed. There's such a tremendous quantity of seed and dust, and the seed has a little tiny fungus on it that gets stirred up when you're moving the seed around. I mean, it's a very clean seed, but it's just natural that it has a little tiny fungus, and some people can be allergic to it, or it can cause just plain old allergies, or respiratory infections. So that's why we wear really good quality masks when we're tossing seed around, stirring up dust and fungus. It's for our protection from the seed.
Another question here for, I think, Kristine. How does the seed mix get selected? So I guess that maybe is to say, is it the same seed mix every year, or are you actively depending on, I don't know, are there good years and bad years for certain native seed species?
That's a good question. Supply and demand can vary a little bit year to year. For example, if there's a drought, some species don't do as well. They don't produce as much seed. Or some years there might all of a sudden be a demand for certain species. For example, the solar industry likes little blue stem and cytops because they're shorter grasses. So they're buying up a lot of those species, and there might be less of that available. So I always have a certain seed mix in mind that I want to buy, and I usually get most of those species, but some of those species might be out. And sometimes every year I like to try out 1 or 2 new species just to see how they do and to add variety.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, let's see what other questions we have here. We're getting close to the end of our time here today. Want to thank everyone for joining us. Want to really thank our presenters. This has been fantastic. Will the Tallgrass Prairie Center work with cities to develop planted areas? Kristine?
We can provide the seed as long as you have a roadside plan or an IRVM plan on file with the DOT. I see there's a slide up here that tells you how you can learn more. If your city does have a plan on file with the DOT, and if you don't, you can contact that website, then we can provide seed. Every fall, I email cities and counties asking them to let me know how much they want to order for next year. And that's how I know that you want seed. Or just email me and give me a heads up that you want to receive that email.
And that's a perfect segue to Trees Forever has a very active role working with cities to develop that roadside plan, which makes your city eligible then every single year for this type of benefit, getting that native seed. Now, of course, it needs to be placed in the right of way, but there's plenty of places that you can certainly find within your community, in your city, that makes sense for the right of way. But it's important to remember that some of these native plants can grow quite tall. So there's always issues with snow drifting, with sight impairments, and those types of things. But there's plenty of opportunities. So get in contact with Trees Forever, one of the field coordinators, and they can help guide you in developing that roadside plan. We'll also be having some roadside plan webinars later this fall and into the winter season, where you can learn more about how your community can get a roadside plan completed. Really want to thank once again Chris Henze, Roadside Manager in Johnson County, Kristine Nemec, the coordinator for the roadside program at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, and our very own Bri Hull, Northeast Iowa Field Coordinator. Thanks all for your time today. Have a wonderful week, and hey, check out the Stewards of the Beautiful Land webpage, because there's some great activities going on all across the state in various counties tonight, tomorrow night, and upcoming. So have a great week, everyone. Take care now.